Mental health is one of the most crucial yet often overlooked aspects in the Indian society. The issues of the mind are shrouded in shame and silence. But today we have with us someone who's determined to break that narrative. Neerja Birla, founder and chairperson of the Aditya Birla Education Trust, talks about her own journey into the mental health space with the founding of Empower, a mental health advocacy that has been at the forefront in India with a focus on breaking the stigma around mental health issues, especially for women. She talks about the need for an open, inclusive, and a supportive society. Thank you for being here, ma'am.
It's a pleasure.
Let me start with something that I've heard you say so many times whenever you talk about mental health, and especially ever since you founded Empower in 2016. That right now in India, over the years, over the last 10 years, the problem is not awareness. We have awareness regarding mental health issues, but it is the acceptance that still has a long way to go. And you've also said that people do not avoid care, in the sense they would not want to avoid care, but they do because they feel systems are unsafe, not because they lack the awareness. They know that it will have a positive impact, that it will help them. However, they are not really ready for it. Could you please elaborate a bit on that? That would be great.
So, yes, I would say that the awareness is better than what it was when we started. However, I think there is still a long way to go. But yes, the needle has moved. There has been a mindset shift in a lot of pockets. Um, but however, I think though the awareness is there, when I say that the acceptance is lacking, is because it's still very stigmatized. So individually and as a community, the awareness has increased, but as a community, the stigma has to still shift quite a lot. And as a result, though people are aware, they still sort of hold back from seeking help. People still prefer suffering in silence than owning up to it and seeking help. So from that point of view, I think the help seeking behavior still needs a little bit of change to come through. um, and I think as a community, if we're able to accept it better, automatically I think it'll really help in people opening up and seeking help as and when they require, and not prefer to suffer in silence. One has seen even in very often even in workplaces, people rather suffer in silence and seek the help because of the stigma attached. People feel that if they come out with it, is their productivity going to be doubted?
Right.
Is their self-worth going to be doubted? And a lot of times that then stops people from actually seeking help. They'd rather just go through with the issue, go through with what they're facing,
Yeah.
rather than deal with what will people say, how will they react.
Right.
uh,
So, and do you also feel that in such a scenario, do women especially face unique challenges, because then there are social expectations and there's gender based violence. So, in a way, do you feel that our cultural narrative needs to evolve in order to treat women's mental health as a problem in itself?
yeah, I think there's a huge cultural narrative there. I think, see, along with the stigma, there's a lot of caregiving responsibility that sits on women's shoulders. There's a lot of emotional labor that's going on. There's a lot of burnout that women feel. And, added to that, there's a lot of financial dependency that comes in. And like I'm saying, the caregiver role is huge.
Yeah.
And added to that, there is the entire biological sort of cycle that the
Yes.
woman goes through,
Yes.
whether it's at puberty, midlife, perimenopause, menopause. And
Yes.
one is dealing with those hormonal changes and upheavals in the cultural setting. So you
Yes.
may be you may be having a really difficult time in the office, and you're also having to look after your teenage
Yes.
children,
Yes.
and you may be going through PMS for that matter, or you may be in a menopausal phase of your life. So it's not that one is happening and the others are at standby. I think everything sort of
Together.
intersects and it always comes together.
Right.
And that kind of obviously makes it even more difficult for women. And it's sort of statistics have shown that women do have a much greater tendency, are more prone to anxiety and depressive illnesses than men. Um and then coupled with that is the fact that you're just supposed to sort of endure it all silently. That emotional labor is never acknowledged. And
Right.
very often, of course, it's great to be resilient, but the resilience is often celebrated in a manner that, if you keep quiet about it,
Mm.
or if you're sort of taking it, it's supposed to be very brave.
Mm.
But, it's just normalized. That emotional labor is always normalized. And
Right.
that makes it even more difficult.
Right.
One is always sort of then wanting to reach that benchmark of being able to endure it quietly. But
Yes.
why should we endure it quietly, right? I mean, I think the idea is, I think the narrative can change and evolve in normalizing it. So nobody is shirking away from caregiving responsibilities. You're not shirking away from having to look after aging parents, for example, or
Right.
you're not shirking away from your office responsibilities.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one needs to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
One needs to acknowledge that, yes, it's a difficult thing that I'm going through.
Yeah.
I'm still doing my best, but that doesn't mean that I can't talk about it. And I
Right.
think if we're able to normalize that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and if we can, we can sort of acknowledge that there are difficult phases and there are difficult patches,
Yeah.
and it's okay to talk about it. It's, that giving that validity and validating those feelings, I think will really help in women being able to seek help.
Right. And this is, I think, true also in, for example, if you see women in high pressure jobs or in leadership positions, how does the imposter syndrome play out over there? How do they really manage this stress? How do they
Yeah.
also acknowledge that, yes, this is a problem?
Yeah, I think
Because
imposter
it's,
syndrome, work or no work, um, I think all of us just go through it. We're always feeling that we are not good enough.
Yeah.
We're always having
Yeah.
to, in our minds also. And I think, to be fair, in the corporate world or even in any other sort of lot of industries,
Right.
the number of men are far greater. And I do find that, I've seen it very often where a woman who's placed with a lot of men
Yeah.
is having to, and wants to sort of work double to prove herself.
Herself.
uh, it just is, and it's unfortunate. And I think that imposter syndrome definitely plays out even in leadership roles, because you're always pitting yourself against somebody or something that you think is way better than you. And
Right.
that definitely takes a toll on your mental health, because
Right.
you're that there's always a self-doubt. You're
Mm.
always sort of second guessing yourself. um, there is always burnout, which then obviously always spins off into being overly anxious, being irritable.
Yeah, and yet the society is more likely to address men's mental health issues than women's. So, do you see this comparison? Is it getting starker or now? I mean,
See, to be honest,
in
I
a
feel
decade has
that
passed.
Men and women both go through mental health issues, and I think both are dealing with stigmas and cultural narratives in their own spheres.
Hmm.
So for men, I think they deal with the fact that they're not supposed to show their softer side.
Right.
Men are not expected to
Yeah,
cry.
that's true.
They're not supposed to be having mental health issues, so they deal with those stigmas. Women, on the other hand, deal with it but are expected to
Suffer
bear the
quietly.
brunt and
Yeah.
suffer quietly. So
Yeah.
that's that stigma. So I would not say that one is sort of that men's mental health issues are being dealt with more than women,
Hmm.
but I think they both are dealing with their own issues. So I feel that, like, say for example, on the helpline,
Hmm.
we get a lot of callers who are men. In fact, about 78% of callers are men.
78%.
78%, which is very high.
Very high, yes.
So that kind of,
Wow.
tells me that it leads into the fact that men are wanting to obviously talk. They like the fact that it's incognito.
Right.
They don't have to deal with the gender bias, and they're willing to talk about it.
And also that because they are anonymous over the call. So I think
Exactly.
it's easier for them to really
It's
speak
easier
about
to-
it.
I also feel that there is a huge stigma where, people feel that if you're a high achiever
Yeah.
or if you're doing well, then you can't be dealing with a mental health issue. But the two can go together, right? I mean, very often there are high functioning individuals
Yeah.
who could be highly depressed or could be dealing with severe anxiety and panic.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel that load is far greater because you have set standards for yourself.
Yeah.
There are expectations, there are
Expectations.
people's
True.
expectations,
True.
and yet you're literally fighting a daily battle,
Yeah.
dealing with your anxiety.
Quietly, yeah,
So
within yourself.
within
Yeah.
yourself. So that is a big myth that, that high achievers can't have mental health issues. I don't think that that's a fair assumption at all.
Right. And I think in the exact same way as you said, I think motherhood is another area where, like women are expected to take it as a very natural course.
Yeah.
And you can't be undergoing depression. You can't have, low feelings of, like you can't feel low
Yeah.
basically when
Yeah.
you've just delivered. However, that is the exact moment and exact time when women do go through so
Yeah.
many emotions.
Yeah.
How do you think should we address this? Postpartum depression, it is a reality.
Yes,
but
it is real. It's
Yes.
absolutely real, and I've been through postpartum depression, and the first time that I went through it
Yeah.
after my first child,
Yeah.
I didn't know what had hit me, honestly, and I think I was riddled and saddled with so much guilt because one is like you're saying, you're
Yeah.
expected to be happy,
Right.
especially after your first. It's a great joy, and it is a
it
very
is.
very big moment in your life.
Yes,
But
true.
the fact of the matter is also you're also dealing with low phase.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
So I
Which
think
you are not able to explain
not
to
at all.
those around.
Absolutely. So I think creating awareness about it,
Yeah.
talking about it, because that's what helped me in the second time. Because I knew after I finished my first,
Yeah.
when I started reading up, and then I realized that there is something called postpartum depression. Till then, up until then, I didn't even know there's a term for it.
True.
So just knowing that,
True, yeah.
having that information backed with knowledge,
Yeah.
just was very supportive. It really, validating my feelings
Right.
really helped me navigate it the second time.
Right.
It didn't mean that I didn't go through it the second time, but it just meant that I was able to deal with it
Yeah,
better.
because you were more aware at
Yes,
that time. Yeah.
yes,
I think
absolutely.
now in cities, we still know about the terminology, but however, those maybe in the remoter parts of the country or even in tier 3 tier 4 cities are not really aware that something like this is natural. It happens
Yeah,
to the body.
yeah.
And we kind of tend to blame ourselves. Why am I not feeling that happiness which comes with it? So do you get women at calling your helpline with complaints of postpartum depression? And
So we've seen that, yes, we have it across the board. And I think
Right.
the way to deal with maternal mental health, which is really becoming very important, is embedding it in the system. I think like during pregnancy, one goes through, the women go through physical checkups. But I think mental health checkup needs to be embedded into the system,
Right. True.
which then also goes on postnatal as well.
True.
And I think once those checks and balances are embedded into the community service, into the community program, is when it will help normalize it and will help women realize that this is something that women do go through. So, like you would have a normal checkup, a simple thing like, say, blood pressure. It is expected that it will rise during the trimester, for example, or gestational diabetes is a known thing. So similarly, if we're able to put screening in place, if questions are asked related to postnatal depression, it'll also help women realize that this is a normal thing. Women do go through it, and there is a way that you can navigate it.
Right. Do you think such kind of these interventions are also necessary at the perimenopausal and the menopausal stages also, because women don't tend to really approach a doctor, because they don't think that it is that they need to approach someone for that. Do you think?
Absolutely. I think also I think in our generation, somehow our mums, I don't know how they went through it, a lot of times didn't even know what they were going through. So we don't have that advantage of a lived experience.
True.
Right? But the next generation now, like say for my daughters, they're already seeing me go through it, and they have that experience. They know that what is there, what is to be expected. So I think for a lot of us in our generation, if we are able to actually, again, put it into systems and actually, have routine checkups, have more awareness around it, talk about it more, I think will really help, because we are actually the first generation in a sense who's actually getting exposed to it without having a lived experience of the past.
True, true. And even talking about it.
I mean, talking
Because
about it.
women earlier would not even speak up
Yeah.
and they will not even say anything. I think that helps. These conversations regarding mental health, especially women's mental health, I think they are very, very important. So that also brings me to the next question about, pressures of social media. How do we really, because so what we are seeing is women, right from teenagers, young girls, to maybe women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, everyone's battling these pressures, in different ways, in their own ways. How do we shift this conversation towards women's mental health in the area of social media, that can be supportive, where women do not feel the pressures of body shaming. They do not feel that they need, they do not feel anxious to look a certain way, to present themselves a certain way. What is your take on that?
See, it'll be very, social media is here to stay,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And I think um, using it appropriately and in a balanced manner is what actually one should be going towards. But it'll be very ambitious and utopian for me to feel that the content that goes onto social media needs to be regulated, right? Because if the content is regulated and balanced, then there is no problem, because then the consumers are able to consume the right content.
True.
That would be the ideal and the utopian thing to do.
Right.
But I think otherwise, if you're able to consume it in a balanced manner, is where the trick is. So the minute you feel, which again, I think, it's very personal. Like for me, I feel that after having consumed it for a few minutes, I can't do any more of it, because I think for me, that's my sort of ceiling. But the right thing to do is to consume it in a balanced manner, not to overdo it. And I think overdoing anything is detrimental to your health. So I think it's the same to social media as well.
Right.
But actually, if the content going on social media can get regulated, if each person who's actually putting it up takes responsibility for it and puts up matter which we know is not going to harm people, which is not unreal, which is true to itself, I think that is, as a community, if we can do that, that'll be the best way.
Right. But for now, the ball lies in our court.
I would
We need
think
to
so,
self-regulate.
Right? We need to self-regulate.
Yeah,
You need to
as long
know
as possible.
how much is enough.
Right.
We need to sort of have a check on ourselves on not overdoing it.
Right. That also brings me to my next question. I would like to ask you, tell us, how do we get our friends, our families, our our allies to really root for us, to be our mental health allies, right? How do we, help them understand or make them understand, please support us, we need it, we also have our own mental health issues. So how do you do it? You tell us from your own experience.
So I think that, for example, I realize that within my own ecosystem also, there are very few people talking about perimenopause and menopause. I started talking about it because I felt that I went through a journey myself, because, like I said, there was no lived experience.
Yeah.
And I think when it first hits upon you, it takes you a little time to understand what is happening, because you don't know what is happening.
Right.
And you're always attributing it to something. You don't realize that it's actually a
internal
hormonal shift that is taking place.
Yeah.
So first it takes a little time to get adjusted to that. Then you're spending time getting adjusted to a new you, which also takes a little bit of time. You got to view yourself a little differently, because there's a shift in everything. There's a shift in your energy levels. There's a shift in, of course, the way you look also changes.
True.
So there's a shift in, like brain fog is real. So there's a shift coming about there. So there's that shift coming.
Yeah.
And I realized that nobody was talking about it. And I just happened to talk about it to a friend of mine. And it just so happened that even she felt the same, that she's going through it, but she doesn't know what is happening. I said, I'm going through it and I don't know what's happening. And then we realized, something, this is what is perimenopause. And that conversation of 20 minutes made me realize that sisterhood is so important.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, let me talk about it. And I started talking about it. And I realized that, there were so many other people facing the same thing. And, that's how the conversation got going. So, in a way, it just helps validate what you're going through. It makes you realize you're not the only person.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes you realize that there are other people going through similar things. You can learn from their
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah.
And it doesn't change it. It doesn't change what you're going through. It doesn't change the changes that are going to take place. But yes, it does help you sort of acknowledge it. And I think acknowledging in itself is I think a way of self-care.
Right. That's the starting point, I
That
would
is
call
a starting
it.
point.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it's a huge
Yeah.
step forward.
So, if you were to give us three points of advice, tell us what would you say to women who are just starting out, who are young, who are in their 20s, 30s, but who are suffering silently, yeah, or maybe even those who are working, who are all right up there of the corporate ladder, and yet they do not really have someone who they can confide in. What should they be doing? How should they be communicating their mental health problems?
Yeah. I think, it's important to understand that first, it's important to acknowledge it yourself.
Yeah.
I think, uh, we very often run away from what we're feeling. We don't want to acknowledge it. And for the longest time ever, we're just shoving it under the carpet. So, acknowledging it yourself, I think, is the first thing. And also knowing that, accepting that, yes, it is lonely up there. It is not something, uh, everybody has that feeling of loneliness. It's not only you. I think
Right.
the ubiquity of leadership is loneliness at a level in that sense. The ubiquity of feeling this is that, yes, one needs to acknowledge it. And from there on, I think talking about it, is the way, because I think once you also make yourself a little vulnerable, you realize that people then share in your sort of anxiety, because then there are shared stories, and that itself really helps.
Right. In your experience, would you like to share with us any such story, such transformational story of someone who was really down and under, and then has come out through the black hole, feeling better?
There are so many such stories. Actually, there are just so many that it's difficult to
Yeah,
pinpoint on
something
one.
that must have hit you, or something that
Just too many to
right.
very often, like, say, I remember I was at a conference last time. I think it was in Delhi or somewhere.
Yeah.
And I had these like two people who came up to me and said exactly this, that they were feeling really down, just didn't know what to do. They started taking counseling because they were hearing, that they heard a couple of my interviews, and they heard about Empower, and
Yeah.
how that sort of motivated them to actually seek help, because she was completely lost, didn't know what to do, sort of took the courage to seek help, because that also takes courage.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I applaud that, because very
Yeah.
often, like I'm saying, you don't want to acknowledge it yourself.
Yeah.
But she did that, and from there on there was no looking back. So that was a real story of transformation.
Right.
So stories like that, narratives like that, really motivate you to then do more. And it also
Right.
makes you realize that something you're doing is impacting people, and
Right.
that really helps.
Right. On this cheerful note, thank you so much for talking to the week. It has been such a pleasure to be speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.